Okay. What happened? Tentative agreement reached. Why is this cut off at that edge? It shouldn't be. What happened? What happened?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but I hope that we're not cut off here on the edges. Good. All right. So they reach a tentative agreement. So one thing I want to get into before Monday, they published Natalia Marquez over at People's Dispatch was 4 things that we wanted to know and keep in mind before they struck. What we had said last week was that the pilots holding out and saying that they would not fly if they were going to strike is what was going to bring management back to the table. And we had learned on Sunday last week that management would be coming back to the table. And so this was Natalia's perspective on what should they be expecting, which is number one, that UPS has been releasing misleading claims on part-time pay and benefits. All right, so that was why they had broken down in the first place. Here you've got them quoting Luigi Morris's tweet, and we're going to talk and do a whole section on Luigi Morris's perspective. Why? Because he is a UPS warehouse worker. He's a member of Teamsters Local 804 in New York, but he's also a writer and photographer for Left Voice. And he's got, I love seeing kind of his perspective as the week progressed and as you saw this unfold. And I really wanted to spotlight Luigi because we've covered a couple of things that he's done, and I follow him on Instagram and on Twitter for quite a while. And, you know, I know that he stands by and he's living this every day. So I definitely want to showcase that. What were we talking about again? The part-timers were demanding $25 an hour with starting wages. That was their hard line in the sand. Started at $15.50, now $16.65. This guy had been with UPS 10 months. No sign of that supposed $20. Right? That was what the workers were saying. All right, considering that this contract is going to last 5 years, if they're already paying 20, making record profits, why not start with 25? And he's 100% right. All right, so the other things that they talked about was the Hollywood workers showing solidarity, which was awesome. And we saw that rally and we put that up last week, that negotiations would be resuming and that nearly 200 Congress members had pledged not to intervene in case of a strike. The problem with that to me was that's not enough. Right? That was a nice number, but that alone wasn't going to be enough to avert Congress intervening and or the White House intervening and stopping a potential strike. 5 days ago, and I believe that was Tuesday, correct?
It
was like, okay, so we covered this Sunday night at midnight. They met on Monday, and by midday Tuesday, they had already announced a historic agreement likely averting a strike. Likely, not totally. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about here. All right. UPS workers were holding placards, obviously. So I only went to the best of the best. I went to Sharon. So once they announced that there was a TA, I wanted to see, first of all, a couple of different perspectives. And what I found was that Truth Out, Common Dreams, The American Prospect, with our friend and the guy we've been covering a lot, which is Luis Feliz Leon, were really providing the perspective of the Teamsters and really from the union's perspective. And then I also wanted to go to see, well, what do the rank and files say? You know, the actual workers that are in the streets. And that's when I went to World Socialist website. First of all, even though I'm not crazy about their coverage, I want to see what they're saying. They're going to be the most extreme anti-corporate. I went to Payday Report. Then we went to Socialist Alternative. And we went to Left Voice. And we grabbed a couple of articles from Left Voice. And then we also went to Luigi Morris directly. So we're going to bring in a whole bunch of different viewpoints. Some of them are going to say the same things. And I want to see that kind of unity in messaging. And I want you to see that messaging, that unity in messaging on both sides. So first of all, we have unity. Exactly. Thank you, Richie. The Teamsters have reached a new agreement with UPS that the union is touting as the most historic deal in the history of the company. I like that framing because she's starting off saying that the union is touting it as that. It not necessarily is that yet. Likely avoiding the 340,000 worker strike that was slated to start August 1st. It will avoid it as of August 1st, but it may just kick the can down the road a little further. And that's what she's going to say here. Union and Company announced the deal Tuesday, just hours after they had returned to the bargaining table following a collapse in negotiations. I thought that corporate was going to cave and give the drivers and give the union whatever they wanted. And to me, my question is, why didn't they hold out for more? Why were they in such a hurry to run back and make a deal? They had leverage finally. They had the pilots in their pocket. Reef?
What?
Why did the Teamsters, in my mind, give in and negotiate with corporate rather than holding firm and saying, these are our terms, $25 an hour. Now, let's get into, he's going to say that we demanded the best contract. Now, here we go, Sean O'Brien. I gave him a lot of props last week, a lot of flowery rhetoric, and I said, let's see what happens. And I was very skeptical, and I had good reason to be. And I congratulated them right away when they made this deal. And I said, look, you guys got something done, and I give you a lot of credit for that. And as the reviews poured in about what this actually was, it wasn't exactly the best deal they probably could have made. And they're spiking the football, on the 5-yard line because they haven't made the end zone yet. And they didn't even get they're really spiking the football for kicking a field goal because they didn't get everything they wanted. They didn't score a touchdown. And you didn't necessarily even win the game.
Why?
All right, I'm going to Justin Jackson them. That's funny. See, Ryan Grimm, that's how you talk football and actually make sense. All right. So, yes, we've changed the game, battling it out day and night. This is Sean O'Brien, battling it out day and night. Make sure our members want an agreement that pays strong wages, rewards their labor, and doesn't require a single concession. This was their thing. No concessions. This contract sets a new... Well, then if you got no concessions... Well, you didn't get your demands met. So those were concessions. $21 an hour instead of $25. That's a concession, Sean. This contract sets a new standard in the labor movement and raises the bar for all workers. Yes, it does. It does well, but it's still a half measure. And that's what Colin was screaming about. That's what Colin was screaming about, is this is what you get with unions, is you're going to get compromise. You're always going to get that. And I'm going to provide a perspective on why they would take a deal. And it's lame, and I don't subscribe to it, but at least it's something. So here you go. The UPS CEO called the deal a win-win-win. When you've got the CEO of UPS, when you've got everybody on Capitol Hill all touting this deal as a good thing, the workers got screwed. The company was going to lose $810 million from a 10-day strike and potentially a large number of customers, which happened during UPS's last strike in 97. We talked about that last week, right? So now you're very loud all of a sudden. Did you change something? You just
yes, Colin said I was low.
Wow, now you're loud in my ear. But okay.
Hopefully this fixes it.
That's okay. You can scream in my ear a little.
Sorry. Okay.
All right. The existing
Tell me
workers
if I'm too loud, I can turn it down a little bit.
Right. And the existing workers are getting a raise of $275 an hour this year, $750 over the next 5 years. Part-time workers' pay is going to a base of 21, going up as low as 23 from a minimum of 16.20. So it is substantial, and that's what he keeps touting. It's a 48% raise over the course of the contract. So wait a minute. What does the cost of living go up over the 5 years, or since their last?
I bet more than $275.
Oh my God! Since their last negotiated contract. Now she's also touting, and she's basically repeating the Teamster talking points, because at this point they hadn't released the full TA. They're basically going on the PR release from the union in conjunction with UPS. So again, this contract still needs to be agreed upon by the rank and file in order to be finalized. Union leaders will be meeting at the end of the month to review the contract. So that's the rah-rah championing of the labor union side. Jake Johnson from Common Dreams also had a very similarly written article. I mean, they might as well have just teamed up and written the same thing together. He embedded a tweet from the Teamsters that had their "We've changed the game."
Right.
By the way, I'm gonna say something that may be unpopular here, but are you listening, Chris Smalls? This is how a PR arm works.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
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 Next.
Yeah, boy.
On top of that, the PR arm works with reporters to plant stories like this. UPS workers disproved that corporate media's narrative of strikes being harmful. It was UPS workers' willingness to strike, not corporate kindness, that earned them the new TA. It was also the pilots saying they weren't willing to fly, but the demonstrations and those practice pickets, like I said last week, you heard the sound of the UPS executives shitting their pants. Right? They were scared. They were scared for their own jobs because a strike meant they were going to lose their jobs. Not just the union members could potentially lose their health care, and they were putting it all on the line. Corporate executives were going to lose their jobs. That's why they came back to the table. So here we go again. According to a statement, in the days and weeks to come, members will debate the pros and cons of the proposal. But one thing seems undeniable: any significant gains won by Teamsters against a reluctant employer will have come about because rank and file workers showed the company that they were prepared to strike. Right? And this is where they praise TDU, and we've seen a bunch of criticism of TDU as well. Teamsters for a Democratic Union, which is a longtime reform group pushing for more militancy and rank and file democracy within the union. They're also, I believe, aligned with Shama Sawant and maybe even with DSA. They noted in a statement that UPS walked away on July 5th after telling our union that they had nothing more to offer. And in the following weeks, members ramped up these practice pickets, making loud and clear they were willing to strike, and management read the writing on the wall and went from nothing more to offer to the most lucrative contract in Teamster history. And this is where I don't like...
Which sounds like he's the most progressive Democrat in modern history. Like, that's what that sounds like.
Is that the world's tallest midget?
Like,
sorry,
kinda
little person. Sorry, I don't
little person.
I don't want to be anti-PC here, but while it will be up to members to decide on the contract, at least one lesson should be clear: strikes or the real threat of strikes work. And 100% agree, Derek Seidman over at Truth Out. That's the reason why I wanted to put this article in, was at least Truth Out gets that strikes and the threat of strikes actually does have an effect on management, and they don't just say, we're going to replace you with scabs. Now, you need solidarity, and it was precisely because they were prepared to strike that they were able to extract new and important gains, because there was nothing else that had changed from the time that corporate had left the table. Corporate media's criticism of strikes are not uniquely applied to UPS drivers. They're deployed whenever workers threaten to strike. Teachers, nurses, railroad workers, screenwriters, they've all faced these attacks. I really like this article written by Derek. Right? They spoke to several UPS Teamsters and their supporters about corporate media narratives surrounding the potential strike. They offered starkly different arguments of a corporate powerhouse that raked in all the talking points that we've talked about. Over $100 billion in revenue last year, which is forcing a strike on itself because it refuses to pay its massive part-time workers a decent wage. So here we go. Rah, rah. This is awesome, right? Everybody's so happy. And Luis, who's been working very closely with TDU, he also got himself published in the American Prospect. Good for you, man. American Prospect is a much bigger paper, but to me, it's also got a reputation for not only being accurate, but also being kind of shit-libby. David Dayan is a TYT regular. I'm not going to cancel people for going to certain places that could give them potential bigger reach, but I am going to question...
I mean, I can.
You can, but I'm going to question why they're allowing them their work to be published in an outlet like this. But it doesn't, he's classing the joint up as far as I'm concerned. Luis, to me, is better than the American Prospect. I think that he's better than that at Labor Notes. But so he goes inside the historic contract at UPS. I think he also has started to do a little bit of PR for the union. And he, of course, wants to see this contract go through. And he thinks that it's a good thing. And he's going to argue why. Now, this is a long article. Even at 1.5 times speed, it's 12.5 minutes. I'm not going to read this whole article because Reef would murder me. But
that's
okay.
Let you tap first.
That's okay, because this combines with previously announced concessions. It's a lot of the same language, but I really want to get into more of the criticisms of what this is, because I think that we've seen a lot of happiness and a lot of excitement, and I haven't really seen too many people other than Shama Sawant, Worker Strike Back, and Revolutionary Blackout online for the most part. Give them all tremendous credit for saying that this was not a great deal for the workers. So, this is Luis Feliz Leon over in the American Prospect. TDU provided education, coordinating with rank and file Teamsters after members held a Teamsters United workshop and organized their own practice pickets. Local 41's leadership organized a practice picket at one of UPS's 3 major hubs in the area. So, it was showing everybody else by a small number of people standing out and stepping up and going, this is how we're going to do this, right? Perhaps the biggest victory prior to the TA involved air conditioning. And we're going to talk about air conditioning some more. Because this is where, they made as part of the tentative agreement, and I don't think I actually even brought up the tentative agreement. However, it's going to say WSWS, that we're going to go to in a minute, is going to break down where it isn't necessarily great for the workers and for the drivers, right? They're saying that brown trucks are like a microwave because of the dark color.
Right? Yep.
Another one.
What can brown do for you?
Emil, who's in that same local with Luigi Morris, right? Sales rushes like Prime Day are particularly grueling. The trucks are overflowing and it's hard to find the packages. Last August, the UPS Teamsters rallied that the company put fans and air conditioning in trucks instead of ratcheting up the already intense audio and video monitoring by surveillance cameras, right? And we talked about how much they're eye tracking these guys and ladies, which is gross. UPS agreed to install air conditioning in its 94,000 vehicle fleet by 2024. And also to equip trucks with new heat shields and fans. Except that's not exactly the case. I don't believe that the entire 94,000 vehicle fleet will be outfitted with air conditioning. And we're going to talk about that. That was what they wanted. That's what they say. That's what Luis is saying UPS agreed to. I don't believe that is the case, but we're going to find out. On the bustling Brooklyn practice picket line, he was handing out flyers charging $30 for plates full of West Indian staples like curry chicken, right? But 22 years ago, here's one of the guys who hired in at UPS as a part-timer and moved up to package car driver through the company's seniority system. And part-timers can't live off $16 an hour. Again, you're talking about minimum wage. It's 100 degrees in summertime. One person packs 1,000 packages in 4 trucks. Better wages, more hours. This is what they want. Yeah, the new contract doesn't sound legit. Yeah, exactly. That, Colin. Ooh, yeah, that's right. That's how you have a PR arm. I will say that, good or bad or not, there was messaging that was put out directly on behalf of the union and in the voice of the workers, whether the rank and file agreed with it or not. There was a PR arm that represented their union that was out there and in front of corporate media to put out a press release, for example, so that their messaging and their narrative gets put out first. And people are at least going from that perspective and providing that and incorporating that into whatever analysis and coverage they were going to do. What happened here? Let's talk about the part-timers and the way that I think the Teamsters tended, they went and made this almost a two-tier thing. And it's funny how they were trying to eliminate the two-tier system. But World Socialist website, you can always count on WSWS to go hard on behalf of the workers and against corporate. So Tom Hall, and he's from the Socialist Equality Party over at WSWS out of California. Teamsters announced sellout deal at UPS to block the strike by 340,000 workers. This is their perspective, was this is a sellout and this was intended to block the strike. I mean, based on Sean's language for the prior couple of weeks, I disagree. And I really want to read this article because I like Tom Hall. I disagree with a lot of things in World Socialist website. I think especially their COVID coverage was alarmingly alarmist, if that even is a word. But it was over the top alarmist. But you know, their coverage of worker strikes to me is up there, and they cover more of them than just about anyone. What's your take on WSWS, Reade?
Well, you said they're trot, so that I theory broing, trot theory. You even theory, bro?
Do you even theory, bro?
You know.
So their article, Tuesday's announcement of a TA between the Teamsters Union and UPS opens a new stage in the struggle of 340,000 UPS workers. For months, Teamsters bureaucracy under General President Sean O'Brien pledged thousands of times to call a national strike if a new deal wasn't in place by August 1st. But the announcement of a TA 1 week before the deadline and only hours before the talks had restarted, after talks had restarted following a 3-week pause, has exposed this as a massive bait and switch campaign. Bait and switch campaign.
Bait and switch?
Bait and switch.
Bait and switch?
Bait and switch. Yes. Yes, it's a bait and switch campaign. So in general, how loudly the union apparatus declares an agreement historic, as well as the number of pro-corporate Democrats congratulating workers on the deal, which yesterday included Nancy Pelosi.
Who are these people?
Nancy.
Right? And AOC and others who voted last year to ban the rail strike. That's directly related to the scale
Who
of the
are
sellout.
these people?
Yeah, thank you. Moreover, what is left out of the highlights is always revealing as what is included. The details that have emerged in any case make clear that the agreement is historic only as a naked sellout. So here's what we get. Starting wages for part-timers, as we know, who make up 2/3 of the workforce, will increase from $15.50 per hour to $21, rising to $23 over the 5 years of the contract. But $15.50 so low that UPS has already been compelled to raise wages around the country to attract enough workers, and many already make more than $21 per hour. With a working day that lasts only 3 to 4 hours for most, this will keep the vast majority of the workforce mired in poverty.
So they got literally nothing. They already got this.
If they were making more than $21 an hour, they got nothing. Part-timers at the company's massive and modern World Port Freight Hub in Louisville, Kentucky report having to live 3 to an apartment and even go without eating to try to make ends meet. That's nice. Thanks, UPS. What can Brown do for you?
Give you the Browns?
Well, not if you're not eating. But significantly, the highlights say nothing about pensions or healthcare, and you won't need your poop knife either. That's
poop knife.
Yes. An email bulletin sent by the Teamsters to UPS workers alleged unspecified major increases to the IBT UPS pension plan, which covers workers in 22 states. But it said nothing about pensions for workers in the country's other 28 states. Unconfirmed reports to WSWS suggested at least some other regions may not have received any increase in pension payments at all, and only minimal increases to healthcare. That's not so great, right? The contract is going to create 7,500 new full-time positions, which they were screaming about, but that's next to nothing with a company of nearly 200,000 part-timers, some of whom have waited decades to move up to full-time status.
Yeah.
Existing and full and part-time workers will receive a $7.50 per hour wage increase over the life of the 5-year contract.
50 cent.
$7.50 over 5 years. For drivers whose wages have already been eaten up by inflation, this amounts to a pathetic 15% increase by 2028, amounting to a substantial further cut in real wages.
Yep.
An agreement to include air conditioning in all new vehicles will leave drivers without AC into the 2040s, given that UPS keeps trucks in operation for 25 years or more.
25 years or more. Yep. Yep.
Are they going to retrofit everything now? Now we saw that article by Luigi, by Luis Felice Leon, that says that they're going to that they were going to fit the entire 94,000 vehicle fleet. That's not what I see here. New vehicles, not all vehicles.
Yep.
The contract also continues the use of Uber-style personal vehicle drivers during peak seasons, exploiting the economic desperation of part-timers by giving them 8 hours of work a day. And this is the thin end of the wedge of suppressing wages for full-time drivers or getting rid of them entirely. Why do they have to use their own personal vehicles to get a full-time day of work in? Why? Because they don't want...
Because the company doesn't want to pay overhead cost for their own vehicles. Why the fuck would they do that? When they can make you pay it and, you know, work you to death and get all the wealth that you accrue for them, you know. But, you know, whatever.
You know, from now on...
Sure, that's fine.
So from now on, the fight by UPS workers will take the form of an open conflict against the Teamsters apparatus. Workers cannot afford to be extras in a bureaucratically controlled, made-for-TV contract campaign. They must organize themselves to defeat the sellout contract and wrest control out of the hands of the union apparatus. This means the building of the UPS Workers Rank-and-File Committee, founded earlier this month, as the organizing center of the opposition on the shop floor. And then you also have TDU, and they're going to talk a little bit about TDU, but the fight of UPS must be based on drawing the lessons of the experience through which workers have passed. Bureaucracy in the Teamsters and in the other unions have spent decades enforcing massive sellouts while driving strike activity to near zero. It's highly revealing that the Teamsters' most prominent boast about the deal is that it has succeeded in raising UPS workers' nominal wages to slightly above the $19 per hour starting rate at non-union Amazon. This is the result of decades of betrayals by the union bureaucracy, particularly since the mid-70s, when part-timers were first introduced. Right, so they have a whole video about donation because they're always soliciting donations as well. He says, now driven by intolerable conditions, the biggest upsurge of the working class in decades is underway. This has seriously challenged the ability of the bureaucracy, which is hated and distrusted by workers, to play its appointed role of ramming through sellouts. This is shown, for example, by the simultaneous strikes by TV and film writers and actors, the first in more than 60 years, right? Well, so they were calling this strike-ready campaign of UPS was bogus. It was designed from the start as a means of getting out in front of rank-and-file anger, while the bureaucrats worked behind the scenes to engineer yet another betrayal. They were advised in this role, this is where it gets ugly, by the Teamsters for a Democratic Union, Labor Notes, that's Luis, the Democratic Socialists of America, and other pseudo-left groups, all of which have spent decades promoting the fiction of self-reform through the bureaucracy, through cosmetic changes at the top.
Reformist.
Somebody's been saying that all week.
This whole thing
Yup.
sounds reformist.
Uh-huh.
Okay?
Yep.
All of these groups have spent years recasting O'Brien, who is, in Tom's mind, a notorious thug and enforcer for the last Teamsters president, James P. Hoffa, who played a leading role in the 2013 UPS sellout contract as a militant union leader. This paved the way for O'Brien's election as general president in 2021, albeit amid the lowest turnout in the history of the direct union elections, which was a mark then beaten last year by the 9% turnout in the UAW election. In exchange, the TDU, DSA, and others have received lucrative posts in the top echelons of the apparatus as PR managers. If that's the case, and Labor Notes and American Prospect and all these guys are actually getting favors, access, and jobs to be PR managers without disclosing that, that's really bad and really dirty.
Yep.
That's the accusation that I'm seeing here. That the TDU is now aligned with the Teamsters as their PR arm or part of it. In the final weeks before the TA was announced, the TDU even quietly shelved its demand for a $25 starting pay for part-timers and privately informed its supporters that proposal was dead. Wow. That's the first I've heard that. This did not prevent Sean Orr, who's a member of DSA and TDU steering committee, from declaring the deal announced by O'Brien a great victory that was the product of the rank and file changing the leadership of our union 2 years ago.
Yep.
What's taking place at UPS is not just a contract fight, it's part of a larger political struggle. Behind O'Brien and UPS stand the Biden administration and both big business parties. Remember last week, just last week, when we said that he was warning Biden, don't intervene, please don't intervene. Can you pretty please beg not to intervene? And then he invited all the Democrats to stand on stage with him. And we were like, this doesn't look good.
Mm-hmm.
Right? What's taking place behind O'Brien and UPS stand the Biden administration and both big business parties. I'll read that again. The real author of the TA is not to be found in the bargaining room in D.C., but a short distance away in the White House. By drawing together with the union bureaucracy, Biden hopes to strangle the growing strike movement and impose cuts in real wages in order to both prop up Wall Street and to prepare the home front for World War III against Russia and China.
Yep.
Except for one thing. It's not Biden, and we know this. It's the Biden administration.
Uh-huh.
It's
part of it.
It's the apparatus.
He's complicit.
It's the
and
apparatus that with Derpy Joe, Sleepy Joe, Crusty Joe, Creepy Joe.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like Bush didn't do 9/11.
Pretty much. Yes. It happened on his watch.
Even though he did.
And it happened because of him, but he didn't do it because they played on the fact that he was a moron. So
yes, and Biden, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
This strategy has played out again and again, including last month on the docks, last year on the railroads, and in the oil refineries at freight companies such as Yellow, where Teamsters canceled the strike at the last minute over the weekend. Biden, the strike breaker in chief, met regularly with O'Brien in the lead up to the UPS sellout deal, as well as last year when he was preparing to ban a strike by railroad workers. Almost identical methods are being used to try to block a strike at the big three automakers. The promotion of longtime bureaucrat Sean Fain as a reform president. The elevation of the pseudo-left Unite All Workers for Democracy faction into top posts. And close collaboration between Fain and the White House, screened behind radical-sounding public statements by the union aimed at confusing the workers. What
And
are
he
the-
ran a bunch of bad boys.
Yeah. What are the conclusions workers must draw? So first, as long as things remain in the hands of the union apparatus, regardless of who is leading it or what it publicly claims, the only possible outcome is a sellout. But if workers organize themselves, develop alternative structures which they control, and struggle to transfer power from the apparatus to the rank and file, they will then create the means through which they can fight the union management government conspiracy against them. I love how he gets like 89% of the way there. What he doesn't say, and what Colin is screaming at his screen right now, is workers need to own the fucking means of production. And that's where this has to go from there. Fuck unions. Unions are the concession. Unions are the compromise. Unions are not the end-all, be-all.
Thing sucks.
Exactly. Exactly. I know, Colin. I love you, bro. I love you.
Yeah. Co-ops.
Co-ops.
We'll say it again.
Worker-owned co-ops.
Not the co-op that you're being co-opted, but as in a cooperative.
Correct.
You know? I know that's confusing for some of these.
Yep.
So,
Well, because we're talking about Chris Smalls, co-ops and co-ops is very, very hard to tell the difference between. So
yeah.
the UPS Workers Rank and File Committee, part of the International Workers Alliance of Rank and File Committees, must be developed as the organizational spearhead for a movement to reject the sellout agreement and fight for the transfer of power from the apparatus to the rank and file. As long as you retain government protection, I agree with you. But if you are going to strip workers of long, hard, and fought for government protections of their own rights, I'm not down. And rank and file committees don't do that. Co-ops do. Co-ops do.
Yep.
UPS,
and you can also union within a co-op. That's possible.
UPS workers have the most powerful allies on earth, the international working class. Workers everywhere are closely following the situation at UPS and want to unite with UPS workers because they know this is a critical battle whose outcome will affect the class struggle as a whole. By uniting with workers in other companies and industries where they're facing the same betrayals, UPS workers will find the strength they need to defeat this tentative agreement. Not gonna happen. Nice thought.
Nope.
Church of Carlin.
Yep.
But above all, the struggle at UPS raises fundamental questions of class rule. Workers are not just fighting against a greedy company, but an entire social system, capitalism, which can only continue to exist through intensified exploitation and through world war. In response, workers must take up the fight for socialism, that is, the reorganization of society to abolish the profit motive and run the world on the basis of human need, not private profit. This was not such a crappy article, I have to say, for World Socialist website. Tom Hall did a pretty good job there.
Yeah.
Now, I also want to shout out another friend of the show and a pretty good reporter in his own right, independent, Payday Report, Mike Elk, who I've reached out to a couple times.
I'm sorry, who?
Mike Elk. I believe his last name is actually Elkington, but he shortened it to Elk for...
It sounds like one of those names Bart asks Mo. You know?
Right? Is there
Mike
an elk?
Elk.
Is there an elk there?
You know? Yep. Mike Elk?
Hey, Mo.
Anyway.
Right? So Mike Elk, also same things, greetings from the Berg, where it's been a busy day. He actually went out and also interviewed some Teamsters, again. So the news shocked many who expected that the union would hold out until at least it expired before reaching a deal. And they said it's time to pulverize. Well, I don't think that they pulverized. However, Biden pressured the Teamsters to settle nearly a week before the deadline to avoid any shocks that uncertainty of the
Funny
strike
how that comes
would
out.
cause the economy. Right?
Funny that.
Right? Not wanting to upset the White House, Teamsters leadership agreed to a tentative contract according to interviews with various people involved in the union.
You know the thing.
Let's go, Brandon. Again. Go ahead, schmucks. Keep voting Democrat. Keep voting Democrat.
Yep.
Now, Republicans weren't going to help you either, but keep saying Democrats are better, guys. But that certainly doesn't mean it is. All right. While the agreement contains a $250 an hour raise for Teamsters drivers and $750 for Teamsters drivers with more than 5 years, right? The contract leaves over 180,000 part-timers with no path to making full-time status or wages equivalent to what full-timers earn, maintaining a subcategory of part-time precarious workers at UPS. Man, that pisses me off. Only 7,500 part-timers are going to be converted to full-time, and less than 10,000 were converted after the 97 strike. So they didn't even do as well as when they struck last time. Is there a Harry Beaver in the house?
So riddle me this, Batman. How is it the best historically president of our union lifetime? Huh? How is it?
Well,
how is it that?
Because no contract had ever gone over $20 an hour at any point, probably, would be my guess.
Oh, okay.
That's how he's going to look, spin. Right? I petitioned with TDU for a $25 wage. And here's Chicago-based UPS part-timer Peter Lysingo told Payday Report, the part-time activists I'm plugged into are furious. I feel betrayed. Well, and
it's also the full-time workers are getting fucked over here too. Like,
yes, but they're going to talk about that in a second. But what they're doing again is creating a divide between the drivers. What they're going to do is they're going to push the full-timers to vote yes, the part-timers to vote no, at least a portion of them. They don't care if a portion of them vote no and are pissed off. They expect that a portion of them are going to vote no and be pissed off. They don't need them. Hello, it's Seymour Butts there. Seymour Butts. Is there a Seymour Butts in the house?
There might be. There's a $5 super chat from Care Bear.
Sorry, everybody.
Hopefully this move from the Biden admin will bite them in the ass.
Sorry, everybody. I'm reading chat. I'm reading chat while I'm doing this, and I'm doing.
He's getting squirreled.
I'm doing.
This is why I tell him not
but
to.
I'm doing Mo from Simpsons. I know everybody kind of knows that reference. So, yes, hopefully this move from Biden won't bite them in the ass. But, of course, we know it will because Corn Pop was a bad dude and he ran a bunch of bad boys. And I got hairy legs. They turn blonde in the sun. Here's a guy.
We're boned.
Yeah, here's a guy. Sorry. If I still can't get full-time status with 24 years seniority, that's a problem, Virginia-based UPS part-timer Zach Callahan told Payday Report. Again, shout out to Mike Elk for getting the word from the UPS part-timers. I'm in a precarious position because I need the 40-plus hours I get, but since I'm part-time, I'm only guaranteed 3 hours a day, and now it'll be 3.5, which is still weak. They can always cut my hours without notice. Right? So over the next 3 weeks, Teamsters will vote on whether or not to approve the contract, announcing their results in late August. While the Teamsters hailed this as a historic victory, it's unclear if the deal will even be able to pass. Already, there is significant resistance to the contract among part-timers. However, given the big raises for many full-time workers, those workers may vote against the interests of part-timers. Stay tuned as Payday continues to cover the fight. And please support Payday Report. I like Mike a lot. Pittsburgh Independent Media. So, from the Berg. So, what do we get? We get the perspective of Socialist Alternative, which is absolutely vote no. And why? Well, rank and file UPS Teamsters and worker strike back activists are saying vote no and escalate the fight for a strong contract. Now, this was published on the Worker Strike Back website. Worker Strike Back, as most people know here in chat, is an organization that was started by Shama Sawant. Go ahead, Reef. So call her what you like to call her.
What? Salami croissant?
Yes, salami croissant. I love it when you say that. That's very funny. We love her. She's an outstanding organizer from Seattle. She's much beloved in the lefty community. And she's been a leader in founding this organization. She's left the Seattle City Council to organize workers now nationwide in all different industries with this organization called Workers Strike Back that she's co-founded with Chris Hedges and some other folks. But not bombing some folks. We didn't torture any folks. We formed an organization with some folks. So what Shama and WSB is saying is that workers have been hit hard by inflation. Unions have their highest approval ratings in decades. Millions have been looking to the Teamsters negotiations with UPS and the potential for a massive strike that could bring business as usual to a halt and help build help rebuild a fighting labor movement. For months now, rank and file Teamsters have been organizing their coworkers, attending rallies and practice pickets, and talking to their community about the importance of this struggle. There is a basis for an all-out fight to win the contract UPS workers need, not a negotiated deal that's acceptable to UPS executives. Yes. On July 25th, the Teamster leadership announced a tentative deal with UPS. This deal now goes to the membership for an up and down vote from August 3rd to the 22nd. While the tentative agreement is better than the sellout contracts negotiated by the corrupt Hoffa leadership since 2002, it is insufficient to meet the needs of UPS workers in a time of increasing insecurity for working people. This is the big one. UPS made profits of $13 billion last year alone, on top of handing $10 billion to stockholders while driving down workers' living standards for decades. This contract fight is the chance to make up for the losses of the past 20 plus years. We can make huge gains if we continue the struggle. This momentum, huge. Well, we can make huge gains if we continue to struggle. We have to do it in Shama's voice. Okay.
Is that her voice?
Well, I don't do it justice, but I'm sure.
Or are you doing Apu from The Simpsons right now?
It's probably
like,
more.
Which one are you doing?
It's probably more.
Yeah,
like
it's definitely a bit.
Me imitating Hank Azaria.
Sir, that is culturally insensitive.
I apologize, Lord. I apologize to all the starving pygmies out in New Guinea.
The actual fuck.
Yes, I'm sorry, Shama. You're welcome to come on the show and correct me anytime you want. Seriously. This momentum needs to be carried forward and escalated with a strike if necessary in order to win the best possible contract. And I don't know too many outlets, by the way, that will read this letter in full for their audience. So we love you guys, and we do stand in solidarity with the workers on the rank and file. During the pandemic, UPS workers were praised as working class heroes, essential workers who kept calm and carried on throughout the horrors of the pandemic. Did she really? Kept calm and carried on, like the t-shirt says. Really, keep calm and carry on. Okay, while the billionaires made super profits, we never saw a penny in hazard pay or any other form of compensation for this, and now we face historic levels of inflation and an ongoing cost of living crisis. The proposed contract is 5 years long, and it only offers us an average of $1.50 an hour raise per year. This doesn't make up for the skyrocketing prices of housing, gas, food, and everything else. There is language in the contract for a cost of living allowance, a COLA, automatic increases linked to the inflation rate, but it only applies to workers who've reached the end of their wage progression, and it uses a convoluted formula that pays far below the actual rate of inflation. How convenient. We need cost of living raises that are directly linked to the consumer price index, but built into every step of every pay scale. That's the only way to prevent any potential raises from being eaten up by inflation and to effectively represent a pay cut for many workers. Now, we've heard about this 22.4, changes like ending the two-tier 22.4 job classification, requiring newly purchased package cars to have air conditioning, prohibiting the use of inward-facing cameras, and recognizing MLK Day as a holiday for UPS workers are improvements over the status quo, but they do not add up to the game-changing historic contract that Team OZ have claimed to win. Right?
Yep.
While union leadership says this contract will end the heated two-tier system, multiple tiers are already baked into the massive wage differential between full-time and part-time workers between drivers and inside workers. The TA doesn't create 10,000 new full-time jobs, a strategic victory for UPS executives. Additionally, it opens the door to creating a new low-paid tier of part-time workers forced to use their own vehicles to get more hours. We should be fighting to end the personal vehicle driver classification altogether, not allowing UPS to expand it. UPS wants to use more cheap labor to get billions in profits, and we need to fight together against this attack on part-time workers.
Yep.
Now, at last year's TDU convention, Sean O'Brien said that the union should agree to Sunday working in order to keep up with the times. He was wrong to say this publicly without any consultation with the membership, because this sent a signal to UPS that he was willing to make this concession months before negotiations began. Now, despite the claim of Teamster leaders' press release that they gave zero concessions to the rank and file, the TA would allow exactly that, giving UPS the right to implement 7-day deliveries anywhere it chooses with only 45 days notice to the employees. That's actually in the TA, and she references where Article 26, Section 1E. The new language gives up the union's right to negotiate over this huge change, allowing it only for it to meet and try to resolve questions while agreeing not to unreasonably delay the transition to 7-day working. This enormous concession explains why UPS CEO Carol Tome said that this agreement gives the company the flexibility it needs. Significantly, the Wall Street Journal reported that the company isn't boasting about it, but we're told the agreement will allow more warehouse and delivery shifts on Saturdays and Sundays, which are currently understaffed.
Of course.
It is said currently,
You greedy dirtbag!
it is said correctly that the labor movement brought you the weekend, and now it is not the time to give up this historic gain, which was won through generations of working class struggle. Sunday working isn't keeping up with the times, it's going backward to the Victorian era. As workers organizing at Amazon have said, we work to live, we don't just live to work. And literally my wife used that phrase. We were at another family's house yesterday, and the husband is Brazilian. Shout out to Dennis if you're listening. Hi, Dennis. But my wife said to him, you know, in other countries, you guys really understand the work to live versus here where we live to work. UPS Teamsters should vote no and stop Sunday deliveries in their tracks. So here they're saying vote no and continue strike preparations. For all these reasons, WSB urges workers to vote no and join us in the fight for the contract we deserve. In the meantime, there's no reason why the union shouldn't continue practice picketing, strike plans, and community mobilization. On July 5th, UPS told the Teamsters they had nothing more to offer. It was rank-and-file Teamsters, drivers, inside workers, and part-timers all working to prepare for the possible strike, which created the pressure from outside the bargaining table to improve the TA. Yes, but it was also the pilots standing in solidarity. If the pilots decide that they're going to fly, even if these guys want to strike now because a TA was reached, it's over. A Teamster strike would cost the company anywhere from $80 million to $170 million a day, according to their own figures. In 2022 UPS, they made $13 billion in profits on revenue of $100 billion, and it expects to beat this again in 23. With record leverage to win a genuinely game-changing contract, a deep well of support from the working class public, and the wider labor movement watching closely, Teamsters should be fighting for all they can get, not just taking what's acceptable to UPS, and I will add to that letter, and the White House. Pussies.
Yep. Like if
Teamster
you're a union leadership at this point and you're listening or going to shaking hands with any of the administration, you are fucking up. Like, ugh.
Teamster leaders laid out a long process to discuss and adopt the tentative agreement, starting with discussions among regional leaderships, then going into discussions at locals, and finally into the hands of the members. However, with the TA now released, informal discussions are already taking place in every warehouse, break room, and parking lot. Organizers like TDU, which has had thousands of UPS workers attend meetings, should provide a structure for discussions on the TA and, more importantly, how to increase the pressure on UPS workers, if workers want to vote no and fight for more. You think Sean O'Brien's going to do that after he went and made a deal? He's now going to push every single bit that he can to get this through and to get the members to agree to this, even though it is not everything they want. So, if you're a UPS worker who wants to talk more about voting no and organizing to escalate the struggle to win the contract UPS workers deserve, are you listening, Joe? Get in touch with us. Workers Strike Back is hosting a public meeting that was today at 3 p.m. Eastern with rank and file Teamsters, Teamsters Mobilize, and Joe Allen, author of The Package King. Register there. So, what are the demands? And let's go over what the demands should be. A strong contract would include a base part-timer pay of $30 per hour. Forget 21, forget 23, forget 25, 30. Catch-up raises of 75 cents per year of service with a 5% annual part-timer wage increase and a 4-hour shift guarantee for all part-time workers. Right now, it's going to go up to 3.5. Making MRAs, market rate adjustments, permanent and equal across facilities in a local with contract raises and cost of living adjustments added on top. Take care of your people. You're making $13 billion a year. Paid maternity leave, not just rooms for new mothers to express breast milk while their newborns are in daycare. Basically they're just, it's a pumping room. That's what
you mean the milking room?
That's right.
Yeah, that's what that is.
Inflation adjustments for pension benefits, at least 10,000 more 22.3 full-time combo jobs national.
Like a fucking scene out of Mad Max.
I would bump that much, much higher than 10,000. I'd make it like 50,000. $13 billion. You don't have enough drivers. You got these guys who are using their own personal vehicles. Hire more full-time and put them to fucking work and eat into your $13 billion in profits. Screw your profits.
Yep.
New hires to receive health insurance after 30 working days to be codified in the national agreement. I believe right now it's 90. And 22.3 should get full-time wages. There's no good reason why they should not get the same hourly rate as the RPCD. And we're doing all the hourly work, and we have the same bills to pay. Yes. I mean, everyone is doing hourly work. It's just that the part-timers are getting fewer hours to do it in.
Yep.
Air conditioning installed in all delivery trucks without delay. So that's what our friends over at Workers Strike Back and TDU, who have apparently been handed some positions, but if they're fighting this hard, now, is this controlled opposition so that they have control of both sides of the narrative? Tom Hall at Socialist Equality Party at WSWS would say yes. I'm guessing he would say yes. I don't know. I want to shout out this guy who has been awesome in sharing with us the perspective of somebody who's literally on the inside and dealing with this and going through it every day. And this is Luigi Morris. He's with Left Voice. He is a socialist. He's a lefty. He's a UPS part-timer. He's a Teamster. And it's really been interesting to see his perspective. So he wrote an article in Left Voice that there is momentum to fight for more. And he breaks it down. Now, right away, he tweeted, and I want to go over what his first thought was after seeing only the highlights. Now, he hadn't read the TA yet, but that despite some important gains, it doesn't meet many part-timers' expectations. We can definitely fight for more. Here are some of the areas where it falls short.
$25 an hour minimum, right? Going from $15.50 to $21 is an important jump. But as part-timers, we were very behind on our wages. After decades of sellouts, 21 doesn't even catch up, which should be the bare minimum of inflation adjusted. Right? Part-time workers with seniority are especially frustrated because for them, under the TA, some who have been working 11 years and are already making $20.80 only get bumped to $23.55. Little over 21 and way below inflation. Depending on seniority, part-timers will be paid up to $1.50 an hour extra, divided probably in 50 cents for each 5 years or something along those lines. So they're not really going to get $1.50 an hour. It's going to be based on seniority. Then this TA means that the two-tier system between part-time workers and drivers maintained. A top-rate driver will make $49 an hour by the end of the contract, while new part-timers will make around $23, less than half. Under the contract, inside workers would still have second-class status. We can't even say that our working conditions will be any better. Based just on the highlights, there's no new news of AC in the warehouses, nor any mention of making our 10-minute breaks any longer. Looks like we're still going to be guaranteed only 3.5 hours of work per day. There was no hazard pay during the pandemic. Despite exposing ourselves, risking our families' lives, keeping society running, and generating record profits for the company, the TA doesn't even include an essential workers bonus. We move over 20 million packages per day, 6% of the U.S. GDP, and 2% of the world economy. We make society run, a credible threat, secured all these concessions, but we have the power to strike and force UPS to give part-timers much more than what this TA offers. Part-time workers are the majority of the union, yet we're treated like second-class union members. We want real equality. This is why I wanted to speak up for Luigi Morris, and I feel like, and I'm glad he was interviewed, and I'll shout out Jordan Chariton for reaching out and interviewing him on Status Coup.
What?
Yep, I know. He says next week we'll be able to see the fine print of the TA and we'll have a more accurate sense of what the situation is. This is just a first approach with information that's available now. So it came out and they did release the TA. And I wanted to show this picture. And this is UPS part-timers at Griffin, Georgia. And you will see that on my thumbnail here. Here. That's one of them. They are vote no's. That's what that's all about.
Okay.
Right? So that's Griffin, Georgia. Let's first read his article, and then I want to show one other thing about the pilots and talk about the pilots and how I have a little bit of egg on my face, and I'm gonna eat a little crow here. But let's first get into Luigi stuff, because I can't shout Luigi out enough. I love his passion. I appreciate the fact that he's putting it all out there. He's risking his job by doing this, by the way. By writing all of this and being this critical, he could lose his job any day. Because UPS can do what Amazon's been doing, what Starbucks has been doing, and get rid of any workers that are speaking out and dissenting against the company, against the TA, and against the deal potentially happening. And I'm really hoping that they don't do that. Shout out to Luigi. And dude, thank you. So his article, again, I think covers a lot of what he tweeted. About 340,000 workers were set to go on strike in what would be the biggest strike of its kind in U.S. history. Now that strike is on hold as workers read, debate, and vote on the TA. After years of stagnant wages and deplorable working conditions, UPS workers have been organizing around the clock to fight for their demands, including much higher starting salaries for part-time workers and ending the two-tier system. Many of these demands reflect conditions that are not just limited to UPS. Winning them would have implications for the struggles of other workers in this sector who face similar conditions of precarity, low wages, hazardous conditions, and weak contracts, if they have them at all, like FedEx workers, for example. Just the possibility of a strike at UPS
has struck fear into the hearts of capitalists and politicians who stand to lose billions in profits from just one day of workers walking off the job. But it's also galvanized and inspired thousands of workers and activists who see that if the working class fights back with the sharpest tool at our disposal, the strike, we can win even the demands that bosses say are impossible.
Catch me outside. How about that?
Yeah, how about that? So Left Voice sat down with UPS part-timer Luigi Morris to discuss his impressions of the contract, what's next for this struggle, and why he's going to vote no. So they asked, with the announcement of a TA, given what we know so far, what does this mean for the workers? He said after they walked away from the bargaining table, stalling negotiations for 2 weeks, UPS and Teamsters bargaining team reached a TA Tuesday morning, and this means that we won't go on strike next week as we review the proposed contract and vote on it. We know that our determination to strike and our collective action within the last couple months, with practice pickets, meetings, and demonstrations, scared UPS to its core and have already forced it to make several big concessions after decades of major losses that lowered labor standards for UPS workers in the logistics sector. This is a contract that makes some gains. We also know that we have the support of the working class as a whole, as well as strong public support for our fight. People understand that UPS workers, along with Amazon workers and many others, were at the front line in the pandemic, risking our lives while the bosses made billions. We can't continue with the conditions we've been under for years, and now we're fighting for more. Yeah. So what are some of the important victories or steps forward? So they wanted to know this. He says, again, AC will be installed on all package trucks, but after January 1st, and fans will be installed in the truck's cargo compartments. This is not a small thing, especially as workers have been fighting for this demand. However, it only makes for the minimum amount of package cars fitted with AC to be 28,000, which is only a quarter of the current fleet.
Quarter of the fleet.
We saw somewhere else.
I'm not gonna lie.
We saw somewhere else the 94,000 was thrown out there by Luis. That may be or may not be, but 28,000 during the life of the agreement. But we need to get these changes as soon as possible. We can't keep exposing and risking drivers and helpers to these conditions. We face record temperatures across the world this summer due to climate change. And stories of workers dying on the job from heat are becoming disturbingly more common. Remember that UPS driver Esteban Chavez Jr. died last year after collapsing in his truck from heat stroke.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. The proposed contract certainly makes some significant changes to wages that have been degraded with years of inflation. When they released the highlights of the TA, it was worded in such a way as to make full and part-time workers think that we were going to get a $10.25 per hour raise through the life of the contract. But now that we've seen the actual language of the proposed contract, it's clear that we'll only get $7.50 over the next 5 years, and that includes an automatic bump of $2.75 in 2023. That's still well below inflation. Further, it's not clear what changes are being made to pensions across classifications and the different supplementals across the country. UPS was forced to make other important concessions, which the latest TA stipulates Martin Luther King Day will be a paid holiday. Yay, 8 hours of paid holiday for free. That we'll get 2 extra sick days. That we'll get more SurePost on package cars, and more. And at the same time, there are many important shortcomings. So here's where we go. The biggest thing was the $25 an hour. Carol Tomei made $27 million last year. Meanwhile, part-time workers at UPS are living out of their cars, working 2 or more jobs, and hardly seeing their families. They're making poverty wages amid rising inflation. We deserve more. We're still national news, and there's still momentum to fight for more. Yep.
Any relation to Marissa Tomei?
Spelled differently. Yeah. Actually, this would be like Mel Torme because it had the accent over it, but he's Torme and this is Tomei. Mm. Part-time workers with seniority are especially frustrated. We talked about that. For them,
under the TA, someone who's been working 9 years and is already making $17.85 an hour will only get bumped to $21.50. That's not much more than the new starting wage, and it's still way below what they should be making given how inflation ensures that our wages don't go as far and cost of living keeps going up. We heard a lot about the need to get rid of the two-tier system among drivers, and it's an amazing win that it has come to an end with this proposed contract. I don't think it really has, but the TA maintains the informal two-tier system between part-time workers and drivers because a top rate driver, like he says, will make $49 an hour by the end of the contract, while new part-timers will start with $21 and after 3 years will reach $23. They'll make less than half the wage of a full-time driver. And they work a maximum of, they'll get 3.5 hours a day. You're talking about less than $100 a day. Like, what does it cost you to get to and from work? Under the proposed contract, inside workers would still have second-class status, and it would create a new tier separating workers hired before and after August of this year. Yay! Even more separation of the workers. There are still big changes that have to be made to our working conditions. Based on the highlights from the TA, it does seem that we're going to get It does seem that we are going to get AC in the warehouse. Okay. In the midst of this massive heat wave, part-timers like me work in sweltering warehouses, packing boxes that weigh up to 70 or even 100 pounds. It's unsafe, it's inhumane, and we don't get paid enough to go home and rest afterwards. Many people work 2, 3, or more jobs just to get by, especially if they're only working 4 hours a day and not getting 40-hour-a-week wages. Within the proposed TA, we'll still only be guaranteed 3.5 hours of work a day, which doesn't translate to even a subsistence wage. We will still only get a 10-minute break, which is far from enough to rest from the backbreaking pace of inside work, to get out of the heat for a bit, and also to have time to go for food, drink, and use the bathroom. 10-minute breaks. I know I would need at least 15 minutes personally, but I'm not gonna go into exactly why, but I think you guys can. I think you could figure it out. There was no hazard pay, right? Many of the part-time workers many of the demands of part-timers have not yet been met. We should not be left behind with this contract. And I think that they are trying to pit the part-timers against the full-timers. All right?
Yeah.
The fact that politicians and media outlets are celebrating a possible strike being averted, claiming that the struggle is over, but in the end, only the workers decide whether the contract is ratified. So what's next? How do they decide? So Luigi breaks down that the full contract was just released. There will be meetings to discuss it, and the voting will start on August 3rd and last until August 22nd. If it is voted down, the negotiations will have to resume, and the possibility of a strike will be on the table again. When will Sean O'Brien put that on the table? Will he ever? I don't know. I hope he does, and I hope they vote no. All right. So far,
he's too busy transporting people.
So far, workers'
Chief
opinions.
O'Brien, 2 people to beam up.
That's Miles O'Brien.
Bro, they're an O'Brien, right?
Workers' opinions span the entire spectrum. Some workers are satisfied with the TA, while others have mixed feelings and are not totally decided yet. An important sector is unhappy with it and is planning to push for a no vote. But there is a general feeling that we could have fought for more. We were ready to strike. And shout out to our friend INN member Joe, who works at the Philadelphia Air Hub. He expressed that he thought that this would probably go through, even though he thought it sucked, and he would vote no.
Yeah.
The upcoming meetings, conversations at work, exchanges on social media, and the time we take to read the full TA will allow us to have a better characterization of where workers stand. We definitely need not only time, but democratic spaces to discuss every aspect of the contract, the gains, the limits, and what we want to fight for. And you're certainly welcome to come and do that here on How Do We Miss That, because we've been doing that for the last hour and a half already. I told you we'd go deep on this.
Yep.
Right? And I got a little bit more. We need to organize spaces where we don't only passively listen to reports about the TA, but where we openly share our different opinions and plan next steps.
Within our ranks, one of the weaknesses we have to overcome is the lack of organization among part-timers. It's very important that warehouse workers create democratic avenues to reflect on the proposed contract, debate it, and make our own decisions about the way ahead. It's the only way we can know for sure that the contract works for us. Of course, this is challenging because we all have exhausting shifts and most of us have 2 or 3 jobs. Many workers are also mothers and have double the work of raising their kids and earning enough money to pay the bills. Our bodies are usually broken. Sometimes we have parking lot meetings, which are a good space for discussion and debate, but we need to find other creative ways to discuss as a collective and to strengthen the unity between drivers and part-timers that is so vital to unite our struggle in the power of a single fist. I would say using spaces like Discord or Gilded or Slack, but although Slack is corporate and could potentially be compromised and you would have to be careful. Again, Luigi says, I think there was no need to rush to a TA just a few hours after resuming negotiations. I cannot agree more and scream at my microphone enough about why they waited, why they still had 5 days and they had to do that now.
Yep.
There were still 6 days before the strike was set to begin. We could have definitely taken what was good and continued to use the threat of the strike to pressure UPS to even greater concessions. And if they didn't meet those demands, we were ready to strike. UPS was working against the clock, not us. The threat of strike was powerful because of the strategic role that UPS workers play in the economy. Withholding our labor would have not only caused billions of dollars in losses for UPS, but it would have also disrupted the entire economy. This would have put the government in a tough spot, caught between wanting to ensure that capitalist profits flow and Joe Biden's posturing as a friend of organized labor movement to win back a working class social base to the Democratic Party ahead of the elections. We had all the leverage in our favor to have a historic strike. We would have joined the over 160,000 workers who are already on strike and who are already sending us their solidarity. There could have been over 500,000 workers on strike. That's what the working class needs to fight back. Our strike would have even involved UPS pilots who swore not to cross the picket line by flying UPS packages. Thank you, Luigi. This is the only guy, by the way, in all those articles, in all these articles and everything that we covered, by the way. How many times did you see the word pilot mentioned?
Not many.
0 is the answer. None of them talked about the pilot solidarity, which to me was the key that brought them back to the table. UPS was eager to avert a strike that could cost the bosses billions of dollars and set the bar higher for the next contract negotiations. The politicians are happy that they may not have to deal with working class unrest. That's why we won the concessions that are already in the TA. That's the power of our collective action, and it's power we can't give up now. Our most powerful weapon is the strike. It's also the reason why workers should consider voting no on the current agreement. If we actually use that weapon, we could win all our demands, including getting part-timers as a starting wage of $25 an hour. Vote no. And again, that's Luigi Morris, Teamster, UPS part-timer, left voice photographer, and journalist. Speaking of the pilots, this is where I got a leg on my face.
Okay.
Now, I don't know who this is, but I put out a tweet congratulating the union and Sean O'Brien specifically for getting a deal done right away when they announced it on Tuesday. I was excited like everybody else. Hey, the workers may not have to go on strike. I understand that a strike is still disruptive to many people that can't necessarily afford to go on strike. While 93% of them did vote to go on strike, they didn't really want to. They had no other choice. What they wanted was a better deal from corporate. And if they could get a better deal, and this guy was saying that they were getting a better deal, I was happy to champion that.
Yeah.
But here's where it gets dicey. Just spoke. Okay, so Sean says on July 10th, just spoke with the leadership of IPA, provided updates. So far, Captain Travis is with the pilots, is with the drivers. Bill says that he worked for an airline for 30 years. Don't spew that BS. Those pilots don't give a shit about your pizza delivery drivers. And it's funny to hear that kind of language, but this person who says, well said, IPA, President Travis is a paid-off UPS whore, constantly aiding and abetting UPS to throw UPS pilots under the bus who dare enforce airline safety and security. As long as IPA pilots wear golden UPS handcuffs, they couldn't give a damn about UPS-Teamsters and will never honor a strike. I was like, fuck, dude, what are you talking about? So this is, sorry, Sean and Captain Travis. This is the UPS CEO meeting with Sean and Captain Travis. With Captain Travis. Now, what this says, and I'm going to read
Open
this.
a new tab.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yep. You're welcome.
So, again, this is not cited in any magazine or publication. However, it makes an accusation that makes a lot of sense and has not been refuted anywhere. And talks about how UPS and IPA reigns with terror, using an epically corrupt corporate culture that's vindictive and ruthless in nature to literally destroy any employee that gets in their crosshairs for whatever reason that union deems necessary. They historically abused the airline industry substance abuse program, which is called HIMSS, to target and create the perfect compliant pilot. Now, UPS and IPA, being aware that their HIMSS abuses are known, their new game is to manufacture false allegations as grounds for termination, which is the kiss of death for a pilot to ever fly again. Once the targeted pilot is confronted with termination, they back the non-compliant pilot into a corner as if they're doing them a favor by offering early or forced retirement, demanding their willingness to sign a non-disclosure agreement so there's no transparency in the rest of pilot membership. Then they replace the old cadre of pilots.
We don't want to pay out for the insurance, so we're going to fuck you over and tell you to leave, essentially. Like, yeah. So UPS and IPA replace the old cadre of pilots with new pilots or sheep coming from other demeaning pilot jobs like regionals or troubled companies who are happy to wear the UPS golden handcuffs. Therefore, UPS and IPA are guilty of wage theft, stealing years of potential senior pilot earnings, and retirement contribution benefits. Their motto is, a fired employee is a better employee. These With the help of former IPA general counsel and legal cohorts, William Trent, which is a known UPS company operative, IPA President Robert Travis, who is also a known UPS company operative, and IPA VP Stephen White, another known UPS company operative, to include other former and current compromised IPA EB executive board members, UPS has either terminated or forced early retirement against more UPS pilots in the last 11 years than almost the entire major U.S. airline industry as a whole. That's a fact. Those are actual numbers. It doesn't matter whether you believe these accusations or not. All right? Former IPA General Counsel William Trent and UPS outside counsel Tony Coleman, formerly with the law firm Frost Brown Todd, have been and are still the ringleaders of UPS's unethical workplace violence and retaliation program for labor containment against the UPS IPA pilots sustained by Robert Travis. The question is, how many more families have to be destroyed and how many more people have to die for being vocal in their attempts to do their job in enforcing safety without fear of workplace violence and retaliatory targeting by UPS and IPA against their family and careers. So that is kind of important part of the story. And they're calling it Identified Pilot Association Fraud. Ha 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 ha. Right? So that's the perspective there. Now, on top of that, here's someone, Sarah Nelson. Now, she's the flight attendants union. She's the head of the flight attendants union.
representing 50,000 flight attendants at 19 airlines. She was cheering on the Teamsters as well. This same person told her to interview Captain Green for an epic, factual UPS thriller with more nefarious intrigue than a John Grisham novel, or let UPS know the intent to interview and they will reward you handsomely for your silence, asked Joe Senka. Later, they'll confirm their willful crimes. So what are they talking about? Well, here again, you have UPS is a very brutal and hostile company. This contract is bigger than economists, blah, blah, blah. This guy, Richard Hooker, the contract needs stiffer penalties on retaliation and harassment. And why?
TJ Hooker?
Richard Hooker. Our members are tired of being bullied.
Dick. Oh, you mean, I'm sorry. You mean Dick Hooker.
Dick Hooker Jr. Well, it's a junior Dick Hooker.
Uh-huh. Okay.
This contract is bigger than economics. They call us heroes in public, then they treat us as disposable in private. We now have 2 unfair labor practice charges right now against management in our area. That's in Philadelphia, Local 623. I think a friend of ours might know them.